Welcome to Mind Myself Conversations with E. I'm Esther, founder and chief visionary for Mind Myself, and it is our pleasure to be bringing these fabulous conversations to you about health, about body, about mind, about spirit. And you're, of course, welcome to go visit our website at any time and dive into the deep, deep, deep array of information that we have for you. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome to our show Christal Geier from Take Flight Osteopathic Wellness. Welcome, Christal.
Hi, Esther. It's very fun and exciting to be here today.
Oh, we're so glad to have you. And the topic is of such great interest to me, too, because I didn't even know what osteopathy was until, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago. And then when I discovered it, it's like, wow. So let's just jump into this. But before we do, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to this clinic, etc.
Well, I'm started out as an athletic therapist. In high school, I injured myself a number of times and decided that it was probably a good idea to learn how to prevent myself from hurting myself anymore, but also help myself recover from all those injuries. And so in doing so, I found athletic therapy at Mount Royal College in Calgary, and I fell in love. Then an injury sidelined me for a little bit and made me switch gears slightly into the insurance world as a rehab specialist. And I learned that there was this space where there was no diagnosis, no reason for pain, and yet people were in pain, and I needed to figure out why. So that took me to the study of osteopathy, and from there, I was blown away and knew that I was in the right space. And I developed Take Flight Osteopathic Wellness, first starting at home and in my own home practice, and then expanding with a whole bunch of other like-minded individuals looking at the whole body as one whole functioning unit.
Wow. So a very personal journey and then a deep dive. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And I know the title of this talk is What the Bleep is Osteopathy. So let's get to it. What the bleep is osteopathy?
More than anything, it's a philosophy, but the osteopathic manual therapist is more of a mechanic. There's someone who understands and recognizes the anatomy of the body and recognizes that one component, no matter how big or how small it might be, if it's altered in its position, its mobility, its vitality, it has the ability to create change within the body and how the body functions. Osteopathy is like a partnership with the therapist and the client, where the therapist is doing more listening than doing, and partnering and offering dialogue both verbally and through the hands to understand what's happening in the tissues. Our hands are our palpation skills. They are our tools that we use to understand the state of the body, to understand the tissues and the tensions within the physical, the fluid, the electromagnetic spectrums of the body. And it allows us to identify and assess what's happening within the tissue and how those tissues are affecting the vitality and the functioning of the whole. And we also look at what's called the motility of the body, which is a little different than most professions, in that we're looking at this embryologic movement. It's a movement that's a figure eight, like a 3D figure eight, or a lemniscat, we call it, that is the expression of our body from embryology and through death. And so this is what we're also looking for in the tissue that helps identify the state of the tissue and how the body is functioning. It's a philosophy that recognizes that the interrelationship between the mind, body, and spirit and soul, and our connection to life force and our connection to source is vital in who we are as an individual. It's a very gentle practice. Nothing is forced. The therapist, in partnership with the client, mobilizes the healthy forces within the tissue to elicit change. And then the body, simply through its ability to auto-regulate, does the rest. Osteopathy was founded by Dr. Andrew Taylor Still. He was a physician and surgeon in the late 1800s that really didn't love all the methods of medicine and felt that often they did more harm than good. He believed that the body was perfect and as a creation and had all that it was necessary to thrive. And so simply putting the tissue back into the rightful place allowed the fluids to flow and bring nutrients to the tissue and allow the body, in essence, to take flight. To kind of summarize it, because it's really difficult to actually understand and comprehend what osteopathy truly is, it's about touch, it's about connection, it's about communication, and it's a partnership with the belief that within the body resides the tools necessary to elicit and allow health to express itself.
Wow, I was just listening to a podcast myself yesterday on quantum biology, and they were talking about the fluids in the body and how the blood flows and the relationship between the blood and the heart. And you're talking about the tissues. So this is all such deep and rich work. And I love that you're bringing this out to the fore. Now, I know you also talked about, or you have talked about the 4 principles of osteopathy. Can you talk about those today?
You bet. The first principle is that structure governs the function, which means that any structure, whether as long as it's within the tissue, creates any kind of change in its position, its mobility, its vitality, its motility, then it affects its ability to do the job it was designed to do. So if something in the assembly line, for example, is not working, the resulting product at the end is not as it is intended to be, and that can result in pain or dysfunction. One example we can use is looking at the shoulder joint. It's a ball and socket joint. It allows for a lot of mobility within it, but it doesn't allow for much stability. But your elbow joint, on the other hand, if you look at it, it's a hinge joint. It's very stable, but it really only allows for a flexion extension to happen. And so any alteration in the structure from its original then is considered what we call an osteopathic lesion. So if it doesn't have the proper mobility or the proper axis, every joint has an axis that it sits on, and it doesn't have the proper vitality, it can't express itself in the way it should. And that prevents you from expressing yourself as you should. And an example of an osteopathic lesion would be like a door on its hinge. If that hinge on the upper hinge is a little loose, that door sags off it a little bit, and now that doesn't maintain its axis. It still has that ability to open and close, but you need a little hip check to get it in, or you need to yank on it really hard to get it out. And when it's in that door jam, it's allowing air to come through, so it's affecting its vitality. So in the end, it's still able to do a job. It's just not doing its job as efficiently or as effectively as it could. And therefore, it's making other things within the body have to compensate. So that's what we look at as the structure governs the function. The second one is the role of the artery is absolute. Now, if we look at embryological development, the heart was the first organ to develop, and embryologically, it started above the head and then moved into the present, where it is today in the human being. And about 3 weeks is when the arterial system starts to develop. And then from the arterial system, that is when everything else starts to develop. So in essence, that artery is like the pillar. So that is absolute. Anything that's causing any kind of impact on that artery will affect the whole system. And oftentimes it will cause a protective mechanism around the body to protect that. But in osteopathy, we look at the artery as being kind of any tube that allows flow. So that could be nerve flow, lymphatic flow, our digestive tubes, urinary tract, all of those things. And we need the nutrients to come in and the waste to go out in order to prevent disease states and allow the body to function as it should. The third rule of thumb for osteopathy or principle is it's a system of interrelationships, meaning that everything is connected and works together as one whole functioning unit. So my little toe can certainly impact how I move in the world. And it can create adaptation and change. Even though it's a small, tiny little bone, it can affect the whole entire thing. And then it's a system of auto-regulation. So there's an internal adaptive mechanism in our body that helps us to adjust and respond to stimuli. And when everything is moving well and it's functioning optimally, our body is regulating itself in the background with ease, and it doesn't need our mental input to do anything. It's just doing its job. You can look at breathing rate, heart rate as an example, or digestion, menstruation, for example. They're all things that are happening in the background that we have no physical or mental control over. But at any point of time, we change that. The digestive system, for example, it's a system, it's like an assembly line. And so we're going through and we have this end product. But if anything is wrong in that assembly line, we now might be constipated or have diarrhea or irregular bowel movements. That end product isn't the same. Of course, digestion is one of those things that we have the ability to impact by how we fuel ourselves, but it doesn't matter if you put the best things in the system. If there's something wrong in that assembly line, the end product is not the way we want it to be. And so ultimately, the body has the ability, when everything is functioning as it's supposed to auto-regulate, to do everything on its own without our assistance and help, and function well. So.
I love that. It's so powerful, and it just makes so much sense. Can't wait to talk to you more specifically about that later. But why do you think, given its power, why do you think osteopathy is so misunderstood or overlooked, especially in Canada, but it's overlooked in other places too?
In Canada, I think probably the biggest reason is that even though osteopathy stemmed from the United States, it didn't actually come into Canada until the 1970s, really. So osteopathy so when the schools first opened in the the late 1800s, early 1900s, it was people from Europe actually that learned the practice more than people in the US. And so it flourished in Europe, and not so much in Canada. And it wasn't till he wasn't a doctor, sorry, Philip Druel, who started the first osteopathic school in Canada in the 1970s. And that school has since grown. I mean, there's a college in BC, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. But really, in essence, osteopathy in Canada is a baby.
Interesting. Well, and given that, and people are familiar generally with what chiropractic is, physiotherapy, and massage therapy, how would you differentiate it? I know what you've just said, but how would you differentiate it? Where would you put it on that spectrum? And maybe even how would they work together?
Well, yeah, so we're looking at the entire body as all one functional unit. As an athletic therapist, which is very similar to physiotherapy, we were taught to assess the area that they came in, clients came in with dysfunction. So if they had knee pain, we'd look at the knee, but we'd look at the joint below and the joint above, but we wouldn't necessarily look at the shoulders having anything to do with the knee. And chiropractic actually stems from osteopathy. So chiropractic is a component of the osteopathic practice. It's taking the skeletal system primarily into account, but we are, as a body, so much more than that. We are all the tissues within, all the fluids within, all the electromagnetic space within, the energy within. We are that battery. And so we are looking at that whole thing. And so osteopathy itself might, mean bone and pathology, but it simply starts with the skeleton, and anything attaching to it, connecting to it, moving through it can alter the skeleton if there's any change in the structure, and therefore affect the function. And I think one of the big things, and especially as an athletic therapist, moving into the osteopathic field, to say it bluntly, we don't really care where your pain is or what your diagnosis is, because really we're looking at you, at the body at that exact moment in time, and what's working and what's not working, and address what's not working so that the whole body can move and function much more better. That's great English, more better, but
We're not talking English major here.
But we are just the location of our pain is often just that weakest area of our body that is not able to do its job because so many other things are not doing their job. And so we need to look at the body as one whole unit, and not too many professions. I mean, not traditional spend as much time looking at that. And partly because people are coming in, my knee hurts, fix my knee. They're just not recognizing how the body actually functions.
Right. And you said something to me the other day that I thought was so profound. Pain is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's information.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've had clients in my office that I've worked with, and you go through and you do all the things, and you're like, this isn't something I can help you with because there's something else happened in your world. And then you see them a while later, and they're like, oh yeah, I got a divorce. It's like, okay, so pain sometimes is just our body telling us something in our world is wrong, not necessarily that there's something wrong with us. And yeah, so it's always interesting. It's just information.
That's so great. I so love this whole system approach because we are more than the one thing that is presenting and it's all connected.
Yeah.
In your work as an osteopathic practitioner, and I know that you own this clinic as well, so I'm sure you have many hats, but what other modalities or what kind of work do you do as a practitioner?
So my background first came with athletic therapy, so I certainly implement some of that in my practice as well. My work in the insurance industry also taught me a lot of skills about for people with chronic pain and how to manage their life. And not just, their body. I've also done some shamanic training, so I take components of that within my practice as well. And through COVID, I learned that I could energetically do osteopathy, I suppose, from a distance. And so sometimes I incorporate that, but it also allows you to connect with a different layer of the tissue. So I use a lot of different energetic tools within my practice to teach my clients to how to tap into that health themselves and align their body in different ways and things like that.
Wow. I imagine some people listening to that would go, You what? You do osteopathy virtually? It's a manual practice. How does this work? I know that
Uh,
I'm very curious and can't wait to have a session with you, but I think that's amazing. There's so much. We are energetic beings, and energy is irrespective of time and space. So why not?
yeah.
I think that's so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's more traditional energy medicine kind of things. It's just that I use that, how I practice osteopathy is like how I do it from a distance is just the exact same thing. It's just my body isn't energetically, my hands are on your body, not physically.
Interesting. Could you give us a case story of somebody with, of course, maintaining confidentiality, but telling us about a success story or something powerful that's happened with osteopathy?
Yeah, certainly. I think I'm going to talk about back pain for this because so many clients come in with back pain. They often coming in and they've seen other practitioners and they haven't had any success, which is what often brings people to an osteopathic manual therapist. And most of the people are addressing the back because their back is sore, so they're addressing the back as that is the problem. But all too often, it's not the problem. And often, in fact, an ankle is the problem. And so the ankle or the subtalar joint, its job is to take the horizontal forces of the earth that we're walking on the ground and translating that up through the leg. And the same thing happens between the SI joint and the spine. And so if our ankle is not absorbing and translating those forces properly and it's going straight up, then all of that tension ends up lying into the SI joints and the low back. And so a dysfunctional ankle often can, especially over long periods of time, relate or cause back pain. So it's not the back per se, it's something else within the tissues that is impacting, and that just becomes weaker over time because it's trying to adapt and adjust and still do the things we tell it it's supposed to do, like walk, stand upright.
When we think about the body is so miraculous. Back pain, but it's related to the ankle. And that's what we might really need to look at. And I just love that this approach is so systemic and isn't just going, okay, well, let's just adjust your spine. No, we're going to look at the whole thing. And I know there are other modalities that they will look at the joints above, the joints below, and like your whole spinal and skeletal structure, etc. That's great. And this is such a deep level of it.
Yeah.
I'm just so enthusiastic about this. Are there specific conditions or symptoms that osteopathy tends to be particularly helpful for, or not?
It's an interesting question, and I'm not really sure there's a specific answer. It's probably more the type of person that comes to see us. And that finds osteopathic practice helpful for them. They're individuals often that have something wrong with them, but there's no disease state. It's not detectable on imaging. Traditional modalities haven't really offered anything, and they're looking for a reprieve from their symptoms. They're open-minded enough or at their wits' end far enough that they want to try something different to find the answer. And they're more an individual that's looking to understand the root cause more than to resolve the symptoms versus, putting a Band-Aid solution onto the symptoms. So they're really deeply looking for something more. And I think for me in practice, I work best with those that are somewhat in touch with their spiritual nature. I think me as a practitioner, anyone that's just on that physical plane and does not understand or comprehend or have any kind of inkling into the other areas of life, such as the spiritual realm or their soul space, or I have a difficulty helping them because I'm not just working in that physical plane.
I really appreciate you saying that. And my follow-up question to that would be, but what if someone, they consider themselves vaguely spiritual, but they don't have any particular spiritual path? What I'm hearing you say is, as long as they're open to that idea and as long as they're willing to look at beyond just the physical. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people don't, we don't talk about spirituality in our world so much, right? And so some people deny it completely, that even that area of our world exists. But you can tell those people apart, that they know certain things. I'll give you an example. My husband doesn't believe in ghosts, but tell him to go into a house that has ghosts in it, and he's not going to go in it. Tell me he doesn't believe in ghosts, right?
Oh, we are such contradictory beings, aren't we? We can think one thing with our head, and then there's a whole nother level. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
If someone is intrigued but unsure, what's a first step someone could take to begin the exploration of osteopathy, other than coming to Mind Myself and looking our little outline and listening to this podcast? What's a first step that you would recommend?
Well, there's a few that you can certainly go to the website that I have, takeflightosteo.ca, but there's also the Canadian Federation of Osteopaths, so osteopathy.ca. It talks about what osteopathy is. They have a number of videos on their YouTube channel that describe osteopathy and why and who it might benefit and things like that as well. And from the Canadian Federation of Osteopaths, if you decide that you are interested in finding an osteo near you, there's a list of associations that they have. So in BC, Osteopathy BC. In Alberta, it's the Alberta Association of Osteopathic Manual Therapists. Ontario is, I think it's Osteopathy Ontario, but they'll have links in that website so that you can find someone in your neck of the woods that would be suitable if you decide that, yeah, I want to give this a go.
Excellent. I was on that site the other day, and it's very clear.
Yeah.
It's very clear how to find. Many sites are not, and this is one, so I appreciated that.
Yes.
What's something you wish more people understood about, and I'm going to expand this question, not only just about their bodies, but body, mind, and spirit?
Okay, great question. I'm gonna do it probably in a few parts. First, I think is most important to understand is that there's nothing inherently wrong with you. You're perfect. Something may not be in perfect working order at the present moment, but perfection resides within you, and you just need to work with someone to help you express that, and that you are worthy of that perfection. We talked about it a little bit already, but pain is just information. Pain is just telling you that something isn't right. Obviously, when you have an acute injury, pain is telling you you broke something. I get that. However, when you're looking at pain that just crops up and there's no particular reason for it, it's information. And it's just a way to teach you to learn how to listen to your body. And if we learn how to listen to our body, we're going to be healthier in the long run. I think another thing we need to start to recognize is that the power comes from within us. The power to heal ourselves is within our tissues. We just have to learn how to partner with people to help us express it, help us to find it. And we shouldn't rely on people outside of ourselves or things outside of ourselves that have to be put into ourselves in order to find that health. And I think those are probably the big things that we need to know about ourselves, but we are all one. We are a mind, we are a body, we're a spirit of soul, we are connected to source, we have life force moving through us, and that yeah, we're a multi-dimensional being, and one component, an emotion of a past trauma can be stored in the tissue, and until we're ready to release that out of our tissue to help ourselves heal, like we are just all of those things as one, all being affected in how this whole thing works. And to understand that we don't understand to the full capacity of what we are and who and what we are capable of. So have an open mind about everything.
Beautifully expressed. I love it. Is there a question that nobody ever asks you that you wish they would?
This is a really tough question. But I actually was thinking about it and I'm like, is osteopathy magic? And I want to say, yes, yes, it is.
But science-based.
It is very science-based, and especially if we understand quantum physics, which, obviously we're just learning to dabble in really. But yeah, and I think one question that we get that they don't necessarily say directly to us per se, is like, are you even doing anything? And that's because our palpation is and our touch is so gentle, that it often feels like we're doing nothing. And I remember when I first started studying osteopathy, I had a client that came to see me and I worked with her, and I could tell at the end of the session, I said, would you like to book another appointment? And she's like, I think I'm just gonna wait and see. And I'm like, oh, she thought I did nothing. And she literally called back and she was like, I'd like to book another appointment. And I said, wonderful. I said, how was it? And she's like, well, I really thought you didn't do anything, but I feel much better. So you must
Yeah.
have done something.
And oh, it's so true. We're so attached to the linear thought processes of what we've been conditioned to think, and there's so much more available to us, and I love being in this journey. So that's great. That's a great story. Christal, is there anything else as we wrap up today that you would like to leave our listeners with?
I think I'm going to kind of compile a few quotes from the founder of osteopathy. To kind of summarize, I suppose, everything. The union of the natural forces that constitute the body of man is vastly superior to the capacity of any artificial force. Disease is the result of a violation of natural law. The natural forces of man just need to be found and applied to overcome disease.
And that says it all. Wow. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time, your energy, your wisdom. Thank you, Christal.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. And we do this because you matter.